and welcome to the Quirky Critics Film Show. First of all, I'm going to introduce my critics. I have Nadia, Wanyan, and Mitch, and I'm the host, and my name is Amelia.
First, we look at Fritz Lang's 1927 Metropolis, which follows Frieder Friedersen in a utopian society sometime in the future. Second, we'll be looking at a world in 2019 where humans have genetically engineered replicates. It's Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. Thirdly, we'll be looking at a 2001 anime film, also named Metropolis, which draws its storyline from the original Metropolis. Lastly, we'll look at Red vs. Blue, a sci-fi action comedy focusing on the lives and adventures of both red and blue teams of Blood Gulch. Metropolis is home to wealthy, carefree residents. After following a beautiful woman, played by Birgitte Helm, and a group of children, Frieder Friedersen, played by Gustav Fröhlich, is horrified to discover an underground world of workers whom, we discover, are working the machinery that runs the utopian world above ground. Frieder Friedersen makes it his goal to help the plight of the workers in their want for a better life. But Frieder and his father Jo have to work towards quashing a supposed uprising flamed by Rotwang, the mad scientist.
So one huge question I have for you guys for this movie is I thought there was a pretty strong theme in this movie, and the theme that I kind of felt was the most prominent was oppression. So I'd just be interested to hear what you guys thought about this.
It is this massive oppression which is reflected. These films are just reflections of basically what people felt like they were going through back then.
It was also the top thinkers. They weren't listening to the workers, and that's what's making the workers want to revolt and want to rebel against the top. But the top doesn't realize how ignorant they are, and that ignoring the workers would be the downfall of the whole city.
Yeah, I think this is something that's still very prominent and very relatable in today's society as well, that class divide. And even though it's quite bizarre, the one that they depict in the movie between the thinkers and the workers, I definitely still think that there is that relatability there. The other thing that I noticed was that Metropolis had some pretty interesting characters. So I'd just be interested to know how you guys responded to some of those characters.
I think they were all compelling in their own way. They were reflections of Friedersen Senior. You can say that he's a reflection of, well, not only his class, his status. I mean, the Tower of Babel, where he lives and works in, is like the tallest tower in the whole city, and he's obviously so tall he can't see below. And that's where the legend comes from. There's Rotwang as well, and that's when we discovered that they were both in love with the same woman. And obviously, this has affected them in different ways. Rotwang is the avatar of the mad scientist. He's heartbroken, he's obsessed with recreating this woman he loved for himself. Another woman, a robot woman for himself. And most of all, he wants revenge on Friedersen as well.
I think the characterization of the women really represents how that society at the time was a really patriotic society, with the men at the top being holding all the leadership, holding all the power, the authority, and then making the women still the secondary character that brings the downfall of the whole society.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys there. And another thing I found interesting was that character of Rotwang, the whole look that he had going on there. I felt like he was probably quite an inspiration for a lot of future mad scientists to come as well, because he had a very distinct look. And I think looking at, for example, the 1935 Frankenstein, the mad scientist in there, I can definitely see a lot of Rotwang's look in
Hairdo.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's a basis of the evil villain character, the whole build-up of the scientist, the genius, but he's evil.
So next we're going to look at Ridley Scott's 1982 film Blade Runner.
I need your deck. This is a bad one, the worst yet. There was an escape from the off-world colonies 2 weeks ago. 6 replicants, 3 male, 3 female.
Blade Runner is set in dystopian Los Angeles in 2019. We follow Rick Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, who is a Blade Runner. Blade Runners are assigned to assassinate replicants, androids that are designed to look like human beings. Deckard is called to come out of retirement and assassinate 4 replicants who have hijacked a ship back to Earth. As he is eliminating each replicant, Deckard comes across Rachel, a replicant who evokes human emotion. In his mission to eliminate the final of the 4 replicants, Deckard faces some questions, such as what it means to be human and his own identity.
Sci-fi movies.
Historical gladiator one as well.
Exactly. I mean, Blade Runner in itself is quite an extraordinary movie, but I think that there is some overlap between his other movies as well. You can definitely see some similarities there.
Well, I do know one thing about Ridley Scott is that, one, if he does a historical movie, it doesn't end historically. Secondly, his dystopian movies, yeah, they're pretty dark and they might not be accurate either. However, you can't deny that he's a master at this. You can't deny that with aliens and with all and replicants and all these characters, he's giving them a touch of reality. He's giving this strength, this fight of humanity against inhumanity. This big push. It's always this recurring theme. The replicants want to be human, but they're treating other humans like rubbish, and the humans have to fight back. There's aliens and humans that fight against each other.
Blade Runner was a very intense science fiction film, I found, and I also found that it could be a little bit confusing and hard to follow at times. But one thing I did notice was that it had quite a few themes running throughout. So Nadia, I'd be interested to hear what themes you thought.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think misery and humanity is a great big theme in this. Like the misery humanity feels, because I wouldn't like to live there. Well, for one thing, it's always raining. It looks totally miserable. And everyone there seems miserable too. I mean, there's, apart from the themes of humanity and human feelings and suffering, there's also this theme of religion, and you can see these motives again and again. So there's this replicant with the snake, and that's a religious motive there as well, because it's almost like you can see that, like the snake in the Garden of Eden.
That's interesting. It's something that I hadn't really picked up on very much myself, but one thing I did notice was near the end when Roy is holding the white bird, I think it's a dove, it's like that was a lot of symbolism for me, and the fact that we'd gone through this world and we'd seen this whole setting where it's very dark and depressed, and as you said, it's raining all the time. We don't really see a lot of wildlife. I mean, we see the snake and we see the owl, but that bird at the end is something that I felt was something a bit different, and I was, what did you guys think?
The bird. I think the dove represents like innocence and pureness. The only white that's in the film.
The only pure white, otherwise it's cream, it's all dirty.
So next up we're going to be talking about Rintaro's 2001 Metropolis. So we've already talked about the 1927 Metropolis, and although they have the same name, they're not actually the same story. 2001 Metropolis is sort of loosely based on the storyline of the 1927 Metropolis.
Second Metropolis, Rintaro's 2001 color anime version, is set in a technologically advanced city with a great divide from the upper classes, living in luxury above, and workers in the dark, cramped, dirty levels below. Robots coexist alongside humans, blamed alongside the elite for the lack of jobs and poverty. Two private detectives, Shunsaku and his nephew Kenichi, travel from Japan to arrest the mad scientist Dr. Lawton, unknowing that he was part of a scheme by Duke Red, unofficial ruler of the city, to build a super robot, model after Red's deceased daughter.
But, I mean, you definitely can see some common themes between both metropolises.
I think this is this whole humanity versus robots thing. Again, we saw it in the first Metropolis with Maria, the robot, and the actual Maria, who's more of a saint than a devil. But here, you question that. I mean, back in the first Metropolis, they had very different mindsets. They had set rules, set everything. But here, you question things. You ask, okay, is being a human such a good thing? Is being a robot such a bad thing?
I think the robots act in a way that reflect us humans, because robots are originally programmed by humans, and if they were programmed to just give, I think we have that sort of attribute as well. We program them to do the work, to give, to not want anything back. So I think that reflects us. And in the end, I mean, there's that robot, that rubbish picking robot. He helps Kenichi and Tima. And that's a reflection of that it itself has intellect. Yeah, has intellect. It wants to help. It wasn't programmed to.
When Tima discovers that she's a robot, she thinks she's a human, basically, and she is a human. This is another comparison we can make with the first Metropolis. She was made in the image of another human. She was made to think she was a human. But then she realizes that she's not, and it's a lie.
You can also compare that to Blade Runner and how Rachel thought she was she wasn't a replicant and she thought she was actual human.
Yeah. And that replicants previously weren't actually programmed to have like memories, and all of a sudden that they've discovered that now they do. Yeah, it's quite similar.
Say.
You can also compare that to Blade Runner and how Rachel thought she was she wasn't a replicant and she thought she was actual human.
Yeah. And that replicants previously weren't actually programmed to have like memories, and all of a sudden that they've discovered that now they do. Yeah, it's quite similar. Next we're going to be looking at a new media cinematic series, Red vs. Blue. This is by Rooster Teeth, which comprises of Bernie Burns and Matt Hullum. This has a completely different feel to the previous films that we've been looking at. It's, in my opinion, quite funny.
Red vs. Blue takes place in a futuristic universe where two sets of soldiers, the Reds and Blues, fight a civil war in a desolate box canyon when they would rather be fighting aliens and supernatural forces. Of course, boredom and short-circuited brains lead to mishandling with the disastrously hilarious consequences. The series is YouTube's longest running and parodies franchises with first-person shooters, military life, and science fiction.
The main genre was comedy. I think another thing that compared to the other films that we watched, it's I wouldn't say there's not much dystopia, but it's very minimalized. The soldiers in the series are very bored and they just dick around.
Yeah. In terms of the budget, looking at both Metropolises.
Well, this was a YouTube series, so of course it'd have a lower budget.
But do you think it's still sort of as effective but in a different way?
Yeah, it's effective in a different way, but it's because it's a new media. It's it's easily accessed through the internet compared to when movies were available.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously this is almost entirely different from both Metropolises and Blade Runner. But I mean, is there any sort of similarity you think that you can find between the two?
It's still questioning our existence.
That's it from us today. Thank you for watching the Quirky Critics Film Show.
Damn it. Hey!